All right, so we're on to our final panelist, Monica Swanson, who is the business manager for the Port of Rotterdam. She runs a number of international hydrogen supply chain initiatives. Her focus is on initiating and building strategic coalitions worldwide to help create the hydrogen supply chains and corridors of the future. And one of her key areas of interest is Canada. Port of Rotterdam is among the top 10 ports of the world and the largest port in Europe. It is a gateway port for many traded goods into Europe, reaching over 500 million consumers within 24 hours. It's also a major energy hub for Europe, receiving some 13% of the total energy consumption for Europe and reaching some 40% of EU industry end users for their energy needs. Port of Rotterdam, on request, provides port advisory services to government and port companies, in some cases opting to co-invest. As the hydrogen hub for its region, it is looking to connect globally to ensure supplies of hydrogen are connected with the customers in the demand areas Rotterdam services. Please join me in welcoming Monica Swanson. Thank you for being with us, Monica.
Well, thank you, Erin. Sorry, I was entering late. Thank you very much for having me here. Canada is a very, very interesting country for renewables and has been for a long time. I heard Chris from Siemens say that our big challenge is there to connect supply with demand. I could not agree more with anything than with that. And maybe you have seen our MOU with Chile. So I did see a connection to the previous speech there, where we are looking worldwide to see how we can accelerate the hydrogen supply chain. This is not a national thing. This is not a European thing. This is a global thing, which makes it a very, very interesting process to be part of. Could I get the next slide, please? Just to give you a bit of a framework about the Port of Rotterdam, we are a landlord port like most Canadian ports, or maybe all Canadian ports. We have some 3,000 commercial parties working in our port community, and we are a very, very big energy hub for Europe. Some 13% of energy consumption in Europe comes into Europe via Rotterdam, and that's quite a lot considering the density of the population in Europe. And something else, some 40% of industrial EU energy users are reached via our port. So we have a strong hinterland connection with North Rhine-Westphalia and Germany, but also with Belgium, Austria, parts of France. And we provide energy. Nowadays, it's steel, it's coal for the steel industry, it's oil, it's gas, but this is going to change. And that change is of huge importance to everyone involved. Next slide, please. What we see in the world, everywhere, people are making nations are making their plans for a new energy mix. People are also developing roadmaps, strategies for hydrogen. The cost of renewable electricity, and you were an early adapter in Canada, but the cost of renewable electricity everywhere is going down. And it's now cheaper than any alternative, really, if you apply it well. And for shipping that energy, hydrogen is a very good carrier. Now, when I say hydrogen, I'm still not saying what it actually is, because hydrogen is just like a molecule. It's a gas, but we still have to choose how to ship it. And often that is done by putting this molecule into another substance. The main questions on the table for H2 export by ship, but in any case export, are that we have to get a higher and cheaper production, lower cost of production and logistics. We have to choose carriers, and there might be multiple choices that are worthwhile and applicable, and they could sort of be done in parallel, but there's a huge discussion there on LOHCs versus liquid versus methanol versus ammonia. And this is to do with cost, it's to do with energy efficiency, it's to do with ease of transportation and safety. In some cases, you could use existing ships, existing infrastructure. In other cases, like liquid, you have to totally reinvent the infrastructure like we've done for LNG. Another challenge really is how to increase production volumes fast enough for the demand that is being developed, actively developed and promoted in areas, continents like Europe, but also in Japan, Korea. But in Europe, we're looking at some 60 million tons per annum in 2050, which is a huge volume. And then the last challenge is how to build a large and stable market. How do we make supply and demand meet? And how do we do that in a way that we don't have too little supply when demand rises and vice versa? There's a lot happening in the world. It's an exciting development. Next slide, please. And renewable energy is now a condition for success in the new energy economy that is, burgeoning. And when I say burgeoning, I should say exploding almost, because there's an incredible lot happening, as I said. And if you look at this chart, this map, you can see that the areas that are red are considered the areas where hydrogen could be produced at the best possible price. And then you are looking at hydrogen trade. Next slide, please. And that would be comparable to the oil and gas trade as we currently know it. And as you can see, this oil and gas trade now goes, all over the world. And it is done partly by ship, partly by pipeline. And of course, what we're focusing on as a port is the shipping part. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at is all kinds of flows from countries where renewables and the conditions for renewables are good, and where electricity can be produced cheaply, so that as a result of that, hydrogen can be produced, green hydrogen, cheaply. Because if you produce hydrogen from renewable energy, it is going to be green hydrogen. And that's something that we are looking for in the EU specifically. Next slide, please. Now, what does this have to do with Port of Rotterdam? This is a very simple representation of our hydrogen vision and plans. You can see this white backbone, this pipeline in our port. Our port stretches about 45 kilometers. And what we're going to do is we're going to have an open access hydrogen pipeline where all industrial users currently on gray hydrogen can connect with. Also the end users in our industry, in our industrial zone. So that's refineries, chemical plants that use hydrogen now, but also the ones that don't use it yet, but want to replace what they currently use by hydrogen, green hydrogen, if possible. They're also going to be connected. What we're also doing, and you can see this little gray pipeline going into the North Sea, we're going to do some capturing and storage of CO2 emitted currently. So we're going to produce blue hydrogen as part of our plan. And what you can also see on this picture is the windmills on the left-hand side. That's going to be wind on the North Sea, quite a large wind park. We're going to connect that to the Maasvlakte area, which is the outer end of our port, where we will have several electrolyzers set up. And when I say we, I have to say we don't do this ourselves. Well, we work on it quite enthusiastically and professionally, but we do this together with our port community. So it's companies like Shell, BP, Nourian, Air Liquide, Uniper, who are going to help us set up these electrolyzers and make sure we have an industrial cluster which produces green hydrogen for direct offtake in our port community, but also into our hinterland. And this is where the pipeline comes in again, because that pipeline is going to connect to Germany, it's going to connect to the national gas grid, and it's going to connect to other industrial areas where hydrogen will be in demand. Now, when I say in demand, and when I say our own production, I have to say that we expect that we can maybe produce 2.5 gigawatts with our own electrolyzers here. And that will in no way be enough to meet demand in Germany, in the Netherlands itself, and elsewhere. And we still have this responsibility to supply the energy into our hinterland. So if you look at one part of this picture, which is the ship, the green ship, the white and green ship with the 3 gas things on it, that's actually the larger part of our plan here, because we can potentially have like some 2 million tons of production per annum locally, nationally. But what we're looking for is to import some 20 million tons per annum in 2050 to meet the demand of about 60 million tons per annum in Europe. Now, if you move to the next slide, you can see that these plans are quite advanced. We're looking at 2023, that's soon, to set up, to have the first electrolyzers going. We're also looking at actually modalities. 2025 have some 500 trucks on hydrogen fuel cell driven trucks. We're also looking at barges, because barges are an important modality in our port. We have some 120,000 barges per annum sailing from our port, Seaport, into Germany, France, and Belgium, etc. There's going to be new terminals. There's going to be the pipelines. Next slide, please. And we're expecting our first shipment of hydrogen already in 2023, 2025. This is the last slide of my presentation. I just wanted to point out to you on this slide how this is going to work demand-wise, because what's being produced currently worldwide as elsewhere, and this is why we're looking at Canada, we're looking at Chile, we're looking even in Australia to see where hydrogen can be produced cheaply to meet huge demand expected. The Green Deal in Europe is not like a fantasy. It's going to happen. It's being pushed with the greatest amount of energy and policies and all kinds of taxation. And what you see happening in this yellow sail, this graph, is where from 2020 till 2030, we still have gray, blue, and green hydrogen in small quantities. By 2030, we expect the market to have been developed to such an extent that production and demand are going to be quite increased from where we are now. And you can see that that increase will be like a hockey stick. It will be steep and it will go fast. And this is from 2030. And this is why already we are trying to connect to anyone in the world, literally anyone who wants to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen, so we can import it, face those challenges together with everyone working on this. And it's a worldwide challenge. And I can say it's exciting to see companies like the old oil and gas companies stepping in, precisely those companies who weren't doing this previously. And it's like a joint effort. It's amazing to witness. And you can see in this image that some 7 million tons might be needed in the Netherlands, 13 million tons in Germany. And this is just part of Europe. This is just Northwestern Europe, and that's it. But there's a world behind that still demanding energy. And we know for sure that in Europe, we can't produce it. So this is why we're looking at shipping. This is why we're looking at you and looking at other countries. Thank you for your time. I think my presentation slot is done. And I hope it was of use. And thank you very much for listening to it and giving me this time.